I'm speaking on the subject of biosecurity this morning as a levy board member, and I emphasise that. And the reason some of us levy board members are speaking today on various subjects is to give emphasis to the importance of the subject matter and the work of the committees that actually do the work on the ground to the key industry activities funded by the levy. So the biosecurity area is run by a committee called the Biosecurity Committee, surprisingly enough, who consists of technical managers, experts from across the country, both from larger and smaller forest owners, plus farm foresters, of course. It's chaired by Dave Cormack, who's here. Most of you will know Dave from Wanita, and if you have any tricky subjects, questions on the subject, Dave is the person that you should ask about this. But just to put it into context, the biosecurity work program consumes about 1.1 million per year of levy board funding, and that's without co-funding arrangements and so on. So that's about 11.7% of the levy board's annual funding, and actually makes this area, which probably shouldn't surprise anybody, the second largest funding allocation after research. So again, reinforcing the importance of biosecurity to our industry generally. So the committee works closely with, of course, the Forest Growers Research to provide guidance on what is the priority to fund each year within those activities. And then it serves as a conduit for the research findings back to the wider forest biosecurity community, ensuring the results are widely disseminated. And a good example of how it's working at present is the information that's being provided and the work that's been done on the red needle cast incursions. So the activity means that the symptoms are being spotted rapidly and the operational management techniques around that incursion can be developed and deployed and continually refined. So the bulk of the spend of the biosecurity program is actually on the surveillance program. And that's about $850,000 of levy funding a year goes into the surveillance program. And the program that's running now has been in place since the beginning of the year and sort of evolved from its 50-year precursor, which was the Forest Health Surveillance Program. So just briefly, the biosecurity program, and I think we've got a slide on this one, operates on a risk-based model. So the surveillance areas and activity units, etc., and all of the transects in terms of monitoring and so on, are located around the key entry points, therefore the risk centres for biosecurity being ports and cities and so on. And this program, which, as I said, has only been operating since the beginning of the year, was developed collaboratively by the industry, researchers, government and international experts, etc. So it's all designed, most importantly, to provide early warning signs about any symptoms of pathogens and disease from outside New Zealand that may impact on our industry. Most recently and importantly, an agreement was signed with the Ministry for Primary Industry to cost share this program. Therefore, we're now getting greater government participation in it and so on. So from, I believe, around about July, MPI is going to be funding 60% of the costs, which is fantastic. And that's an endorsement that what's happening in this area by the industry is receiving government support. They recognise it as a worthwhile and comprehensive program, hence cost sharing should occur. But this is all part of a bigger picture in terms of what happens in the biosecurity area. Some of these things are mentioned on this slide. So there was a milestone in 2015 for the forest sector because in 2015, represented by the Forest Owners Association, and as you know, the way the levy activity works is it's a collaboration between the Forest Owners Association and farm forestry as the two industry sectors. So they working together signed what is called the Government Industry Agreement, referred to not unexpectedly as the GIA. Now, This agreement creates a forum for MPI, the Ministry for Primary Industry, and the industries such as forest sector to jointly, emphasise that word, jointly engage in readiness work and in the event of a biosecurity incursion to jointly decide on aspects of a response. So I can't emphasise enough how important getting into that deal was with the government, because now we have a position at the table in respect of the country's activities with respect to biosecurity, and more importantly, what happens when there is an incursion and so on. And therefore we can have an input into it, hence David's reference to the need ultimately for a biosecurity levy, as clearly the industry would be called upon to assist to fund it. So we're moving forward in this area on quite a number of fronts. So since becoming a signatory to this agreement, the industry's been involved in several incursions over the last few years, and some of them are relevant to the industry and some not. In fact, in March of 2016, we experienced our own forestry incursion with a eucalyptus variegated beetle, the official name of which I will not attempt to pronounce, but found on eucalypts in the Hawke's Bay. And with that incursion, the industry and MPI, because of the agreement, have worked together on it. There was another incursion in 2016, later in 2016 in Waikanae. So it's happening, it's all around us. Hence the ability with the presence of the levy to be able to fund this work is extremely, extremely important. And now that we're working with MPI as a signatory under this agreement, the relationship is developing such that they are keeping the industry better informed on the risks that they're thinking about and possibly are concerned about, and so on. Some of you would go to the annual Biosecurity Conference, which is run as a multi-agency initiative each year, at which international speakers are invited and participate, all designed to share the knowledge, gain wisdom, and most importantly to help our industry in this sphere operate to international standards. Because, as you're all aware, we are facing considerable pressure with respect to our social licence to operate and things that need to happen around biosecurity. Some of you may remember back to the aerial spraying of Auckland, probably would never be allowed again, and so on. So we have to have a profile and be recognised as working to international standards, so when extreme measures are required, whatever form they may take, there is the opportunity for the industry with the government to respond in that way. So many other things are happening within this sphere. Some of you may have heard of PineNet, which operates in response to network for forestry consisting of the wood councils and forestry companies, again part of the process to collect the knowledge and disseminate the information. So in the few minutes I have had, I believe it has given you some sense of what happens in the space and how important it is to the industry and how important the levy board feels about the levy funding being, as I said, the second largest allocation going into this area really is. So thank you.